Over the last 10 years, something unsettling has been happening in the background of American life. Quiet enough that most people missed it, but big enough to redraw the map of the country. The old story was simple. America expands. New suburbs, new job centers, new next big cities. Every decade, more roads, more rooftops, more opportunity spreading outward like a rising tide. That story didn't just slow down. In a lot of places, it snapped. Because while coastal metros and sunbelt boomtowns are battling over housing, traffic, and land, huge parts of the interior are moving in the opposite direction. Not holding steady, not rebalancing, emptying. The kind of emptying you don't notice from a headline, but you feel when you drive through it. Fewer porch lights at night, fewer open businesses, fewer kids at the park, fewer reasons for a young man to believe he can build a life there. From the windswept plains to worn-out Appalachian valleys, whole regions are watching the next generation leave and never return. It's not a temporary downturn. It's a structural retreat. Schools are merging because there aren't enough students to justify separate districts. Hospitals are shutting down because there aren't enough patients, doctors, or revenue to keep the lights on. Main streets that once ran on local pride now run on dollar stores and survival. And here's what makes 2025 different. The split is no longer subtle. It's impossible to ignore. This isn't migration in the old sense, people shifting from one growing place to another. This is concentration, people and power stacking into fewer zip codes, fewer regions, fewer states. The winner-take-most geography of modern America. Metros with diversified economies keep pulling talent and capital inward, while single industry states and aging rural regions lose the very people they need to stay functional. When the population drains, everything else follows. Tax bases thin out. Roads and water systems age faster than budgets can repair them. Political influence weakens. Employers stop considering these places because the workforce isn't there. And the workforce isn't there because the employers aren't there. It becomes a loop, and once it starts, it's hard to break. The hardest part is what it does to the people who remain. They're not statistics. They're homeowners watching property values stall, small business owners watching traffic disappear, parents trying to raise kids in counties where the nearest hospital might be an hour away, men trying to find work that offers more than a paycheck and less than a dead end. And after a while, you start hearing the same question in different forms. Does anyone even remember we exist? You're watching Across.us4, and today we're breaking down the top 10 US states that are draining fast. The places people aren't moving to, the forces pushing residents out, and what happens when a region gets left in America's rearview mirror. Stick around for number one, because what's unfolding there isn't just a population story. It's a legitimacy story. A state that looks stable on paper, but is getting hollowed out in real time. And if you want more cinematic, grounded breakdowns of the forces reshaping America, economics, geography, infrastructure, culture, hit subscribe. Let's get into it. Number 10, Mississippi. Mississippi has never been a national magnet, but what's happening now isn't just the same old struggles. It's a long leak turning into a sustained outflow. From 2020 through 2024, the state lost tens of thousands of residents. Not because of a single catastrophe, but because enough people looked at their options and decided the math didn't work. The pattern is consistent. Young adults leave for education, leave for work, leave for better health care and stronger schools, and then they don't come back. Families with roots Going back generations are relocating because loyalty doesn't pay rent and doesn't create careers. The job base is the issue. Mississippi still leans hard on agriculture, low-wage manufacturing, and government employment. Those sectors can keep a state running, but they rarely generate the kind of upward mobility that keeps ambitious people in place. If you're 25 and serious about building a future, skills, income, stability, you don't just want any job, you want a ladder. Too many Mississippians don't see one. Then there's infrastructure. When the systems that support daily life start failing, the message to outsiders is brutal. Don't bet your future here. Jackson's water crisis became a national symbol of that failure because it wasn't a freak accident. It was the result of long-term neglect meeting predictable stress. When a capital city can't reliably provide clean water, it signals deeper fragility. By 2025, the decline in parts of Mississippi looks less like struggle and more like quiet abandonment. The Delta region, once an agricultural powerhouse, now contains towns so small that a single closure can break them. Main streets that used to carry local commerce sit with boarded windows and sun-faded signage. The businesses that remain tend to be the ones that survive in shrinking markets. Discount retail, gas stations, fast food. Not because people love them, but because people have fewer choices. Developers and major employers aren't rushing in. There's no strong demand for new housing. There's limited appetite for commercial investment. Even the brighter pockets along the Gulf Coast have lost momentum compared to nearby competitors. Why doesn't the tide turn? Because the fundamentals remain weak. Education outcomes lag. Healthcare access is thin. And the state struggles to present a credible, long-term growth plan that's bigger than slogans. The result is a specific kind of loss, not hatred, not outrage, indifference. Mississippi isn't hated by outsiders. It's simply not chosen. And when an entire generation stops choosing a place, the consequences don't stay inside state lines. Number 9, West Virginia. West Virginia is the clearest example of what happens when a state builds an identity and an economy around one industry, and that industry fades. Coal didn't just provide jobs. It built towns, funded schools, and shaped a culture of pride rooted in work that was dangerous, essential, and respected. But the modern economy doesn't reward nostalgia. Automation reduced labor demand. Energy markets shifted, and the comeback promised for decades never arrived. From 2010 through 2024, West Virginia lost a large portion of its population, and the pressure continues. The state's age profile keeps climbing, and that creates a second problem. When you lose working age adults, you lose the people who start businesses, buy homes, raise kids, and keep institutions alive. By 2025, the consequences are visible in the services people take for granted. Schools close, especially in rural districts, because enrollment drops below sustainable levels. Kids ride longer bus routes on roads that weren't built for that kind of burden. Hospitals and clinics vanish too, creating medical deserts where emergency care is a long drive away. In a place with rough terrain and harsh winters, distance isn't an inconvenience, it's risk. Meanwhile, the job choices for young adults narrow: low-wage retail, service work, or leaving. And many do leave because they don't just want entertainment or nightlife. They want a stable path to a career, a family, and a future that doesn't feel like a gamble. In towns across the state, you see the physical evidence: abandoned blocks, collapsing houses, and property values that fall so low they stop functioning as wealth at all. If you can't sell your home for enough to move, you're not just staying, you're trapped. West Virginia still has natural beauty that could support tourism and remote work. But remote work requires broadband. Tourism requires investment, safety, and reliable services. Without those, beauty becomes scenery you pass through, not a reason to plant roots. In 2025, West Virginia isn't just overlooked. In many ways, it's being written off. A warning about what happens when a state refuses to diversify until it's too late. Number 8, Louisiana. Louisiana hurts because it has real assets, culture that can't be replicated, ports and industry, major universities, a global city in New Orleans, and still, the state has been losing residents. The push factors are relentless: political dysfunction, infrastructure decay, rising insurance costs, and a daily life tax that shows up as stress, risk, and unpredictability. It's not that Louisiana lacks resources. It's that the system struggles to convert resources into stability. New Orleans is the symbol. After Katrina, the city rebuilt and pulled people back. But now, many are leaving again. Not because of one storm, but because of a stack of pressures: safety concerns, struggling schools, high costs, and the constant calculation of flood risk versus financial reality. Outside the tourist corridors, blight spreads where investment doesn't reach. Neighborhoods hollow out when insurance premiums climb beyond reason, and homeowners realize the long-term math is against them. Even Baton Rouge and other mid-sized cities don't escape the drag. Industrial jobs automate, energy markets shift, and graduates who could anchor the next chapter often leave for states with more dynamic career markets. Then there's the literal ground beneath it all. Coastal erosion and rising water aren't abstract problems in Louisiana. They are a timeline. Communities watch the Gulf creep closer, and insurance markets react the way markets always react. They price the risk or they leave. When home ownership turns into an annual financial punishment, people vote with their feet. Add in service failures, power outages, water issues, aging infrastructure, and the decision becomes less emotional and more practical: leave now or pay more later. Louisiana's lesson is cold. Culture can make a place beloved, but it can't hold a population if the fundamentals of daily life become unstable. Number 7, Wyoming. Wyoming is the paradox state: legendary landscapes, low taxes, open space, and still a place most Americans won't choose. With a tiny population base, even modest losses matter. And the reasons are straightforward. The economy leans on energy extraction and tourism. Tourism can't carry a state year-round, and energy jobs increasingly require fewer workers. Wyoming sells a story of freedom and frontier toughness. For some people, that's a dream. For many, especially anyone under 40, trying to build momentum, it becomes a constraint. Career options outside energy, ranching, and service work are limited. The state lacks a dense network of industries, major corporate hubs, and large research institutions that generate new job ecosystems. Isolation makes everything harder: healthcare access, education access, social life, even basic services in winter. And winter is not a footnote. When weather regularly turns dangerous and distances are long, the cost of living there isn't just money. It's time, risk, and lifestyle trade-offs that many people won't accept without a strong economic payoff. Wyoming's deeper problem is strategic. Too much leadership energy stays locked on waiting for old industries to return to old peaks. But the market has moved, technology has moved, and workforce expectations have moved. In 2025, Wyoming's emptiness isn't just geography. It's the outcome of an economy that doesn't offer enough pathways for modern life, especially for younger adults who want options. Number 6, Alabama. Alabama isn't the poorest, and it's not the most remote, but it's still losing people. And it's losing a specific kind of person, the young and the upwardly mobile. There are jobs, especially in manufacturing and aerospace, but wages and mobility often lag behind what neighboring states can offer. That's the quiet killer. Not unemployment, but a ceiling. People leave when they feel capped. Alabama's major cities have strengths. Birmingham's reinvention, Huntsville's defense and tech-adjacent economy, Mobile's port potential, but the state struggles to convert pockets of progress into broad-based retention. Education performance remains a drag. Healthcare access, especially in rural counties, is fragile. Infrastructure needs are huge, and as costs rise, the old advantage, it's cheaper here, doesn't carry the same weight if the amenities and services don't match. In rural regions, the decline is sharper. Towns that used to function as small hubs lose businesses, lose schools, and then lose identity. And when state politics spends more time on symbolic battles than practical retention, jobs, wages, broadband, healthcare, the outflow continues. Number 5, Kansas. Kansas is a case study in how policy choices can echo for a decade. The state suffered long-term damage from economic decisions that weakened public services and undercut confidence. When schools lose funding, when infrastructure projects stall, when the state feels unstable to investors, you don't just lose money, you lose people, especially the ones who have options. Rural Kansas is shrinking hard. As agriculture consolidates into larger operations that require fewer workers, towns lose their economic anchor. Schools merge, hospitals close, and a place that once felt self-sufficient starts to feel like it's fading. Kansas also struggles with identity in a competitive region. Nearby states offer stronger magnets, bigger metros, faster growth industries, more dynamic labor markets. If you're a graduate, a skilled tradesman, or a young family doing the calculation, Kansas often feels like the place you pass through, not the place you bet on. Culture war politics can accelerate the problem, not because everyone agrees or disagrees with it, but because it signals priorities. When legislatures focus on fights that don't improve wages, housing, broadband, or investment, young talent interprets it as a warning. This place isn't building for the future. By 2025, Kansas's story is a warning about what happens when you damage your institutions and assume the market will reward you anyway. Number 4, Vermont. Vermont surprises people because it looks like the good life. Safe towns, beautiful scenery, strong community identity. But it's been losing population, and the reasons are modern and brutal. Affordability, limited job growth, and isolation. Vermont's economy leans on tourism, small-scale manufacturing, and agriculture. Those can sustain a lifestyle, but they don't generate enough high-paying career ladders for a large working-age population. Housing is the pressure point. Wealthy second home buyers and short-term rental demand drive prices up, while local wages don't keep up. Families get squeezed. Young adults leave. Retirees move in, but retirees don't replace the workforce. Regulation and zoning also slow new building, which tightens the supply further. Good intentions, protecting character, preserving land, can still create a trap if they block the growth needed to keep communities functional. Even remote work, the supposed lifeline, runs into reality. Rural broadband isn't always reliable. Healthcare access can be limited, and for serious medical care, many residents travel out of state. Vermont's decline is not collapse in the dramatic sense. It's a slow squeeze, high costs, limited opportunity, and a state that feels increasingly like a place you visit rather than a place you build. Number 3, North Dakota. North Dakota is boom and bust America in a single state. The shale era pulled in workers with high wages and fast opportunity. Towns expanded overnight. New housing, new businesses, new infrastructure, built on the assumption the boom would hold. But by 2025, the workforce demand is smaller. Automation and efficiency replaced many of the jobs that drove the surge. When the jobs vanish, the population doesn't settle. It leaves. What's left behind is the aftermath of a rushed build-out. Underused apartments, strained municipal budgets, and communities trying to maintain services with fewer people and less revenue. The deeper issue is the same pattern repeated across America. A state rides one volatile industry, then fails to build a second engine while times are good. When the climate is harsh and the lifestyle trade-offs are significant, people need a reason to stay beyond the paycheck. Once that reason disappears, the exit is fast. In rural counties, the decline can be severe enough to threaten basic viability, schools, clinics, even emergency response coverage. North Dakota's lesson is simple and unforgiving. If you don't diversify during the boom, you pay during the bust. Number 2, Alaska. Alaska feels like a myth. Freedom, wilderness, toughness. But myths don't balance budgets and don't lower grocery bills. Alaska has been losing residents, and the push factors are hard to argue with. Extreme costs, extreme isolation, and an economy that's losing its old fuel. Oil revenues have weakened. Fishing faces ecological and market pressures. And while military spending matters, it doesn't carry an entire state's long-term stability. For families, the daily math is punishing. In many places, essentials cost dramatically more. Heating is expensive. Internet can be slow and costly. Specialized medical care often requires travel, sometimes flights, sometimes long distances, and sometimes weather that makes travel risky. Anchorage, the main hub, has struggled with visible social strain, rising homelessness, safety concerns, and business closures that feed a sense of decline. Climate change adds another layer. Thawing permafrost, damaging infrastructure, coastal erosion threatening villages, and communities facing relocation conversations that would sound impossible anywhere else. When the cost of staying climbs and the opportunity ladder shortens, people make the rational move. They leave for the lower 48, where the same effort buys a more stable life. Alaska's story isn't just people don't like it. It's that the margin for error is thin. When services weaken, costs rise, and industries wobble, the frontier becomes a pressure cooker. Number 1, Illinois. This is the one that surprises people because Illinois isn't remote, isn't tiny, and isn't defined by one rural industry. It's a major state with a world-class city. And yet, Illinois has been bleeding residents at a scale that puts it at the top of the list. The headline issue is confidence. Confidence in governance. Confidence in fiscal stability. Confidence that the deal you're getting, taxes paid versus services received, still makes sense. Chicago is a global brand, but even Chicago can't fully protect the state from its structural problems. Residents look at layered taxes and fees, high property tax burdens, and public safety concerns, and they compare it to alternatives. Indiana, Wisconsin, Texas, Florida, Tennessee. In a mobile economy, comparison is ruthless. When major employers relocate, it doesn't just remove jobs, it removes belief. Each corporate exit is a signal to other businesses, investors, and skilled workers. The trend line matters. Illinois' fiscal weight is one of the most serious in America. Massive long-term obligations limit flexibility, and budget pressure encourages tax increases, which can encourage more outmigration, which shrinks the base, which increases pressure again. That feedback loop is the danger. And outside Chicago, parts of Illinois have been hollowing out for decades. Towns losing industry, losing young adults, losing services. Southern Illinois and other struggling regions show the classic decline pattern. Population drops, property values stagnate, schools struggle, hospitals shrink or close, and private investment avoids the risk. Even suburbs that once felt like guaranteed stability feel squeezed when taxes rise and services don't improve. Illinois isn't just a story of decline. It's a story of a sophisticated place losing momentum because the system behind it can't regain trust. Across the American interior, something fundamental is changing. The country isn't simply shifting population around like it used to. It's compressing. People are clustering in places with diversified economies, strong job ladders, and functioning systems. Meanwhile, states that rely on one industry, neglect infrastructure, or fail to build conditions for families and young workers are losing the very people they need to recover. This is the new geography. Winner take most. And the stakes are bigger than who grows and who doesn't. When regions empty out, the nation loses capacity, agricultural capacity, industrial capacity, cultural capacity, and strategic resilience. It also changes politics, representation, and where resources get directed. Some states will adapt. They'll invest in broadband, education, healthcare access, housing supply, and diversified industry. They'll give people a reason to stay and a reason to come. Others will keep shrinking, quietly, steadily, until the story catches up to the reality. Because in America, no matter how beautiful, historic, or culturally rich a place is, it can't survive on memory. It survives on opportunity, competence, and the simple practical reasons people choose a home. You've been watching Across US4, cinematic deep dives into the forces reshaping America's landscape. If this breakdown sharpened how you see the map, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share it with someone who still thinks the country is growing evenly everywhere. It isn't. And as always, the numbers don't just describe the story. They are the story.